Know is that yesterday's gospel reading for the third Sunday of Advent for Year C was from Luke chapter 3, verses 7 through 18, a continuation of the story of John the Baptist's ministry in the wilderness around the Jordan River. As it turns out, in Year A, this portion of the story of John the Baptist from Matthew appears in the second Sunday of Advent. So for this third Sunday in Year A, the reading from Matthew focuses on another place we meet John in the gospel narratives, a place where John is in prison. There we read a critical piece of the Advent story that continues the theme of penitence in preparation for the coming of the kingdom. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas. In this passage, Jesus is in the thick of his ministry, and his cousin John has been arrested and put in prison, where shortly he'll suffer beheading. But while in prison, he's not so cut off from the outside that he doesn't hear reports of what Jesus is doing. As a result, he takes action to find out if Jesus really is the promised Messiah. We pick up the story just after Jesus has been instructing his 12 disciples. When John heard in prison what the Messiah was doing, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" Jesus answered them, "Go and tell John what you see and hear. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me." As they went away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds about John. "What did you go out into the wilderness to look at? A reed shaken by the wind? What then did you go out to see? Someone dressed in soft robes? Look, those who wear soft robes are in royal palaces. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, 'See, I am sending my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way before you.' Truly I tell you, among those born of women, no one has arisen greater than John the Baptist. Yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." As usual, this passage is incredibly rich. There's a lot to talk about here, but because of its place in Advent, we are invited to focus on just one main element, Jesus' comments about John the Baptist, who he is, and what role he plays. Let's start at the beginning, though. John sends his disciples to ask Jesus whether he is the expected Messiah. But instead of answering directly, Jesus points to what he does. Heals the blind and the lame, brings hearing to the deaf, raises the dead, and delivers good news to the poor. This may be a little obscure for many, but these are direct references to at least 3 different passages from the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah 29, 18 and 19, Isaiah 35, 5 and 6, and Isaiah 61, 1. What he's saying is that he is indeed fulfilling the expectations of the prophets for the coming of God's kingdom through his Messiah. But it is what he says next that is so important. After John's disciples leave to give their report to John, Jesus turns to the crowd and asks them who they thought John was. They obviously thought he was someone important, Jesus implies, because, after all, they had gone out into the wilderness to see him. He's not a weak character, a reed shaken by the wind, and he's not a dandy, a man dressed in soft, luxurious robes. No, he's a prophet, but not just any prophet. Again, quoting from the prophets, this time from Malachi, Jesus says directly that John is the one who has been sent as the messenger of God to prepare the way for the Messiah. But it's what Jesus doesn't actually say, but clearly implies, that really is the point here. John is clearly a prophetic figure. His dress, his manner of speaking, his ability to confront authority without fear, All these are meant to tell us something about John, that he is a prophet. But it is what John has come to do that is important, to prepare the way for the Messiah. Jesus is saying, in not so many words, that this is exactly what John has done, and that indeed the Messiah stands before them now. John's call to repentance continues to animate our preparation for the coming of the Messiah, even today. Tomorrow, we'll read one of the passages from Isaiah that Jesus alludes to in today's reading. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.